Good evening, everybody. I'll call to order the April meeting of Planning and Zoning. Roll call, please. Andy?
Yes. All right. Chair Costello.
Here.
Commissioner Tantillo.
Here.
Commissioner Sveska.
Here.
Commissioner Gormley-Barnes.
Here.
Commissioner Skovich. Not have her. Commissioner Holm.
Here.
And Commissioner Bruno.
Here.
All right. We have a quorum.
Okay, if everybody'd stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, our first order of business is to review the minutes of the March meeting. Commissioners, did everybody get a copy, and did you have a chance to review?
Yes.
Any corrections or comments, additions?
I don't have any.
Hearing none, does somebody want to make a motion to approve the minutes as written for the March 2022 meeting?
I'll move.
And second?
I'll second.
All in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries to accept the meeting minutes for March 2022 meeting. Now I need a motion to open the public hearing.
I move to open the public hearing.
Okay, a second, please.
Second.
Dan, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Public hearing is now open. And our first order of business is a special use hearing for 6546 Howard Avenue. And this is Mr. Patrick Olson and Ms. Beth Olson are petitioning the village for a fence.
It does currently exist.
It does exist,
Sorry about that.
but are you putting a new one too, or just we're talking about what's there? Okay, so that's just a Scrivener's error there.
Not
Okay.
bad.
The Olsons have completed all the required paperwork, and the fence has existed on the property for 40 years. So what say you, Mr. Petitioner?
Members of the Indian Head Park Planning and Zoning Commission, thank you for allowing me to speak, and thank you for allowing me to delay my appeal from last month. Had some unanticipated oral surgery and appreciate that time to recuperate. As was stated, my name is Pat Olson. My wife and I own and reside on the property located at 6546 Howard. The basis for my appeal for a variance for the fence on my property is as follows. Now, I've given the board members a copy so you don't have to take copious notes and can follow what I'm saying. First of all, the fence existed before the village annexed the Bartlett section to Indian Head Park. I could not determine the exact age of the fence. Mrs. Hermes, the neighbor to the south, has lived there over 60 years. And in all honesty, she couldn't remember if it was there when she moved in or built after she moved in. Mr. McMahon, the neighbor to the north, has lived there over 40 years. He said definitely the fence was there when they moved in. So the fence is at least 40 years old. How old? I can't tell you. I just can't. Before purchasing the property, I received a certificate of inspection signed by Ms. Kathy Leach of the village, and attached to it was a certificate of inspection list form approved by Mr. Bill McConaughey, copies previously furnished to the board, which showed that the property was in conformance with all zoning uses and codes. If it was in conformance then, nothing's changed that I know of. If it was not in existence then, it should have been disclosed so that it could have been adjudicated at that time between the seller and myself on who's going to pay for anything that had to be done. That, unfortunately, did not occur. When I moved here, I moved from LaGrange Park, which is a considerably larger village and runs much differently. I came to the village hall and had a discussion with Ms. Leach. I asked her, what are the 10 things I have to know about living in Indian Head Park? And we talked about a whole bunch of things. One of the things we talked about was fences. And she said if I had a fence, I could keep it. If I had to repair it, I could repair it. I could not make it bigger, taller, or extend it in any way, but I could keep what's there. Okay. I know that's verbal, that's hearsay, but it's my recollection of what happened. I also have come to learn later that my property abuts the 125 building of Wilshire Green, which is a commercial enterprise, condos, et cetera. And I've come to learn that it is within the village zoning code that properties which abut commercial properties are allowed to have fence variances. Another point that I would like to bring forward. And the next to the last thing, the neighbors on both sides, Mrs. Hermes and Mr. McMahon, signed that document that you furnished that they had no objections to the fence remaining. I get along very well with both of the people, and so they have no objection. And then lastly, neither the prior property owner or owners, however many there were, nor myself did anything out of code, or at least that we knew was out of code, which kind of rankled me when this came up is, wait a minute, with, I had the certificate and nothing was out of code, now suddenly it's out of code, and what's going on? And then when the letters started going 2 years ago with, of course, pre-pandemic and all that stuff. So that's what brings me here tonight is that based on what I've just presented, I respectfully ask for a variance, if that's the right word, a fence variance for my property at 6546 Howard.
Okay, thank you. Good presentation. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Mr. Olson?
I don't have a question for Mr. Olson, but a clarification from Andy. Is Wilshire Green considered a commercial property or a multifamily?
It's actually not a commercial property. It is a residential property.
Okay, and we've interpreted in the past that if a property is adjacent to a property where there's a parking lot, I think, regardless of whether it's a commercial use, if it's a use where a lot of people are parking in a parking lot, we've said that a fence between a residential property and a property with that use is okay. But it would just be the rear property line in a situation like that?
Yes, if it was a commercial property, then it would just be the rear is the typical.
As a
That's
visual
like
barrier between the parking area and the headlights and whatnot.
Yep.
It's like the
the
homes that
yard.
go along Joliet Road.
Okay.
But so a couple things. I know we talked about this last meeting about the inspection reports that would be given out and the inspections that would be taken or done, and in which, the inspections were twofold. They were a building inspection and then also a checklist of different things that would list deficiencies. One of them is no general code deficiencies. Those inspection reports were often done wrong. They were wrong or proper and legal conforming zoning uses. In this case, the inspector said yes. It actually is not. It was a non-compliant structure, and it was a mistake of the village. And that's a big reason why we're going through the process now. I know it's inconvenient and confusing, and understandably asking why, but they are technically not compliant. That's why we started the process to bring them into compliance. Now, the recommendation of staff on this is to handle this fence like the commission handled the fences last time. just to be fair and even-handed with everyone. So the recommendation from staff is to grant approval of a special use for the fence, but with the criteria that the fence has to be removed prior to the sale or transfer of the property, and that would be at the village's expense or done by the village as we handled the other ones.
Sir, would that be the whole fence, or you were talking before about the back where it abuts the parking lot?
So the staff's recommendation is the recommendation of staff is to grant a special use for the entire fence.
Right, okay. And then when it's to be removed, when I sell the property, the whole fence would be removed, or would
Yes.
they leave the back?
The whole fence would have to be removed. It depends on what the commission recommends and what the board
Right.
does, but the staff recommendation is that it would be done at the village's expense.
Thank you.
So,
Andy, maybe we can look at that ordinance again, because my recollection, and of course it's quite fuzzy, is that it just references commercial.
it is just commercial.
Oh,
I
okay.
think it,
So but
yeah.
that's maybe could be relooked at, because if you, as Diana was saying, if you're about a parking lot or certainly a large residence
Yeah.
like that, it makes some sense to have some privacy from that. But anyway, maybe we could just take a look at it and, yeah. Trustee Eck?
Certainly. Do you need me to stay here? Or?
Nope. Thank you. Thank you very much.
My name's Charlie Eck. I'm trustee on the Board of Trustees. In the June 2020 Board of Trustees meeting, Wilshire Towers was identified as a commercial property. It's about minute 104 of the recording if you need to check it. But it was,
Oh, excellent.
and John DeRocher identified it as that. So
Okay.
I can understand the distinction here.
Yep. Okay. That clarifies.
I'll have to check. I don't think it is, but we'll check.
Okay.
it's
I guess what would classify it as a commercial instead of residential?
it's similar
right?
to one, but it is zone residential. We'll see. It honestly, I don't think it's super relevant here.
Right.
Yeah.
So
And just out of my curiosity too, perhaps at the time that certificate was approved, that inspection certificate was issued, were they thinking that it was grandfathered since the people had the fence before it was part of Indian Head Park?
I really don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Almost nobody who currently works on staff was here
Yeah.
at the time of those inspections.
And I don't mention that for it
Oh,
to make a
yeah.
difference, just curiosity.
No, I don't know. I really don't know.
But in any case, it obviously is not the residents' fault. And again, the resident has provided a Plata survey, has gotten signatures from neighbors, has paid the fee for the petition. Yeah. And we've heard of the village's recommendation. Would somebody like to make a motion, or any further discussion at this time? Would anybody like to make a motion that we recommend to the board that we grant approval of the special use with the criteria that the fence be removed prior to the sale or transfer of the property, and that removal will be completed by the village or paid for by the village?
I'll make a motion to move forward.
Anybody like to second that?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And now I need a motion to exit the public hearing.
I move to exit the public hearing.
And second?
I'll second.
Signify by saying aye if you agree.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we've exited the public hearing. And now, and congratulations, they'll talk about that at the next board meeting, Mr. Olson. They'll bring that up for.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And now we need to open a public hearing. Oh, this is the one that's not, yeah, you did say that. Sorry about that. Okay, our discussion now will be the first look at the Triangle PUD, the prospective Dunkin' Donuts development in 6921 Joliet Road. And I know we have at least one comment from a resident.
Yeah, we'll do public comments at the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Is somebody here to present on this issue?
I'll start it off too. So at last month's planning and zoning meeting, it was briefly mentioned that there is a potential for a Dunkin' Donuts to be developed at the 6921 Joliet Road site. This is where the old Dome restaurant used to be. And so tonight we have the current owner of the property, but also the prospective owner of the lot here, as well as his real estate agent, to introduce the project and talk a bit about it and answer any questions. This is really just a preliminary first look. If they decide to go forward with the project, then over the next month or two, however long it takes, village staff will work with them to get an official application packet submitted with all, if you remember when we looked at the insurance building, that kind of stuff, site plans. A big thing for this one is the village is going to need a traffic study since it is on the intersection. So we'll be working with them going forward. But for now, if Sam or Lucy or whoever wants to present the Dunkin' Donuts idea would like to come up, give us a first look. And David, would you bring up or put the plan on the TV? Thank you.
Well, we're proposing to try to do a Dunkin' Donuts here, which will be wonderful for Indian Head Park.
Perhaps you can put the microphone down a little bit, and if you could state your name.
Oh, I'm
please.
Lucy Myra from Remix Market. And we're trying to sell this beautiful lot that the Dome was on. I'm a resident of Indian Head Park for 20 years, so I've been at the restaurant. So now we're trying to put something nice on that corner, which would be great to have a Dunkin' Donuts there. This is a site plan for the second site plan. The first one was, as we sat down with Andy here, we found out that some of this property was going to be taken away maybe by the county and the village for a turning lane or maybe a sidewalks that you're thinking of putting. Is that true? I guess that's what Andy talked to us about.
It would be a county project. Yes.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
So that took away almost 25 feet. And that's one of our issues today. Is that 100% going forward? Or
So like we were saying, we won't know for a while. So I was going to mention this at the end of this, but I'll mention it now. So this Thursday is the open house meeting to look at the Wolf Road alternatives. This is an open house meeting kind of put on jointly by ourselves and the county. The county will be presenting the different possible alternatives to any Wolf Road project, whether it's a certain amount of lanes or sidewalks, whatnot. And that'll be presented Thursday. It's open from 5 to 8. I would encourage everybody to attend who's interested to get to see what the possibilities are, and to also provide your feedback and your input as to what do you think about it to the county. So.
Oh, okay. That's very, because it would take away parking spaces there.
We understand. Yeah, it's so the county will make the final decision based upon resident input and also the village's input.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I think that is still months away, but hopefully after the public input has been given on Thursday and the following weeks, and the county is able to collect it and look at it, they may have a better idea. I don't think we'll have anything concrete official for a while, though.
Okay. Well, if it works out, we'll have to look at that first, because that'll depend on how they could do the turn-in, the drive-through, and all the extra parking that they need. That's a big factor on that corner now.
Would Dunkin' Donuts be purchasing the property?
Yeah, franchisee, he's one of the franchises.
Got it.
Yeah, Dunkin' Donuts would purchase it.
I see. So they'd purchase it, build it, and maintain it. Yeah, okay.
And so they've got their requirements on their drive-through and parking and things like that. So if that property was taken away, that could hurt this purchase. So we'll have to see what's going to happen there. Okay?
Yeah. Okay.
Hello, my name is Kirk Alexakos. I am the owner's architect. I've previously appeared before you for a previous design. And I guess the question for Thursday is if we can ask for your assistance in discussing with the county our needs. If it is 100% up to the county, that would leave us a little helpless. For us to explain our case would have some weight to it, but if we had your assistance as well, I feel like that would really assist in moving this project forward.
So representatives from the village, including myself and John DeRocher, will be there, along with the representatives from the county. We can all talk, and you can explain directly to them, and we'll be there as well. So we can all talk on Thursday.
Perfect. Appreciate that.
Is that going to be here?
Yes, 5 to 8 o'clock. It's going to be in this boardroom.
Okay. Okay.
Andy, I think it's worth noting Wolf is a county road.
It is. It is. That's why ultimately it would be a Cook County project and a Cook County decision. So the policy of the board has been largely in favor of some kind of sidewalks or walkways on both sides. And so we've kind of, to expedite the potential project, we've taken the lead on some of the engineering. All the costs are going to be reimbursed from the county because, again, ultimately, it is a county road and it will be a county project.
So while you will have the ability to speak, it's their ultimate decision.
Yes, the way they come to their decision is based upon multiple, usually 2 public hearings or public meetings, and then those meetings are followed by a period of time in which people can look at the plans. So for example, this Thursday, 5 to 8 is the public meeting, but for 2 weeks afterwards, the plans are still going to be in the boardroom for any interested residents or non-residents to come in and look, and then they can submit their comments online or on paper copy as well. Those will go to the county. Eventually, the village board will also weigh in and give its opinions. Like, for example, with the Plainfield Road project, the village board came out and said, we're not in favor of a 5-lane alternative. So the board will come out and say something like that too. And the county will take that information, look at it, do some more look at the engineering, and then probably have another public hearing or public meeting, and then make a final decision.
How much time would you say we're talking about? Do we have any clue?
So actual construction, if it was, approved by the county, would probably be 2 years away, 3. So right now, they're in phase 1, which is engineering to see really if it's possible to add what lanes could be expanded, what pathways could be added. Then the next step is if it gets approved, then they actually go into the nitty-gritty engineering of how you actually do it, what needs to be done at each location along the whole corridor. And then the third phase is actual construction.
So how long before they're likely to say these are plans firm? These are firm plans.
We don't know exactly yet. Probably, I don't want to say because we don't know entirely yet. It's a bit different for every project.
Is this motivated because it's congested in that area?
Yeah, so it's the general policy of the county to support what's called complete streets, which is streets that have either bike lanes or pathways along the side. So it's a complete street so that pedestrians can go on it as well as traffic. And so that's their general policy, but also due to congestion. And that's something that they'll be able to provide on Thursday, traffic numbers. And, if you have this alternative, this will mean you wait this long in traffic, or this alternative, you'll wait this long, stuff like that.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I guess it's just to reiterate and to confirm, the number of 25 feet that was taken away from the site plan that was just shown, that's not concrete, and nor is it.
No.
It could be way less.
It could be less. It probably won't be more. So basically, when you first came to us, we to try to get the process going, we reached out to the county and said, hey, we got this potential development going on. We need to have an idea. Can you give us some kind of idea of how much, if any, property is going to be taken? And they gave us that as, this is possible. But yeah, it's not concrete yet how much will be taken.
But they're just ambiguous numbers at this point, right?
Yeah, I mean, that is based upon, I think, one of the alternatives right now.
Sure.
But yeah, right now nothing's concrete.
Thank you.
So is the project possible if they take the whole 25 feet? No. So that's pretty critical. Okay.
So what you've presented here is not a workable site plan?
No, because it's taking away too many parking spots for Dunkin' Donuts. How many parking spots?
Okay, so it's based on how many parking spaces you would want to have for your customers?
Right. So
Okay.
typically, for the building code and requirement.
Would you mind coming to the microphone? Sorry, thank you.
Yeah.
And state your
Thank
name,
you.
please.
Please, my name is Sujal Patel. I'm a existing Dunkin' franchisee. So typical building, like from the when I talked to the Andy, I think the 1,000 square feet requires probably about 5 or 6 parking space for the 1,000 square feet. So probably about typical protocol for the new Dunkin' is about 1,850 or 1,950 square feet. So we will require about 10 parking spots, plus also the employees parking too. Of course, we need to have some little easy process of people's getting in and out without actually getting into the oncoming traffic on a Joliet Road or the Wolf Road. It's up to the Dunkin's actually construction manager how they will actually approve it or disapprove it, and see how they can actually look at it as the building construction, and in and out is how easy to get in and out without causing many accidents, and how customer will feel to come in, because sometimes if it's too cumbersome to get in and out, they will not come in.
Okay. I will mention one thing. Since it is in a PUD, it's a special zoning overlay, so it gives the village room to work around the kind of stricter restrictions of the basic building code. Like for parking spaces, we could forgive a certain amount if we wanted to. If we think it's still not going to, it doesn't meet the traditional code, but will it be a problem if we don't think so? We're not tied solely to the code because it's in a PUD.
Yeah.
Well, when the prior site plan was presented, we talked about the need to try to coordinate the circulation and the layout, and where dumpsters are located and all of that with the primary shopping center, because this is essentially an outlot to it, right? And it looks to me like this plan does reflect the fact that the individual curb cuts to serve this little corner would be replaced instead by being able to circulate to that business through the primary parking lot. Is that correct?
from my understanding, I know you could talk a bit more. I know you've spoken with the owner of the plaza about some potential. I know, there's agreements have to be made and whatnot, if that's possible. But I know it's been talked about. I'm sure Sam can talk a little about it, but.
Yes, I didn't actually talk to the strip center's owner. Actually, Lucy actually talked to him. He's able to lease the parking spot, but we're not sure how that can be accomplished because Dunkin' may not allow it because, lease can be, tomorrow can be broken and then, there is no parking left for anybody, not for even the employee with the existing diagram. So Dunkin's usual policy is not to lease anything for especially the parking spot. When you don't have any parking spot, they like to have their own parking spot. Even seems like this diagram does not have any parking space for the even employees.
Mm-hmm.
And the existing owner of the strip center, he's not willing to sell any space that we actually asked him. Lucy asked him that if she can buy some of the parking space along the edge of the property of the sellers, and he's not willing to sell it.
I guess I understand that. Yeah. Any comments or thoughts?
That's a quick question. Do you have a general percentage of how many customers or what percentage of your sales come from drive-through traffic versus walk-in traffic? Given that you've ran or you own other locations.
So during the COVID, we actually had a 90% business to the drive-through and only like 5 or 7% of kind of like walk-in. And most of the times during the COVID, the lobbies were closed, actually, obviously, for that reason. The lobby is open now. But still, I think now the Dunkin' strategy is that they don't want to approve any location without having the drive-through. So drive-through is a must. They don't want to open any Dunkin' unless if it's like a downtown Chicago where there is not possible in a high-rise building. So anything in a suburb, they like to see the drive-through for the approval process. And like I said, most of the 90% business comes to the drive-through.
Thank you.
Would you ever have an exclusively drive-through location?
I can't say right now. I mean, it is possible. Then we'll not have any, there was an idea one time Dunkin' proposed that people can still come to the window and pick up the stuff, no sitting area. But I'm not sure they will recommend that in this kind of town. Because it's a, town is a very prestigious town and they have that image too.
If 25-foot dedication doesn't work, as you demonstrated on the plan, what does work?
I don't know. I have to speak. I can't speak for the architecture. Maybe he's able to probably provide a better answer to you guys than me.
And you don't have to answer it tonight, but I'm thinking Thursday. Thursday, if you come to that conversation with, hey, 25 feet doesn't work, but 17 does, maybe you give those parameters to the county, and perhaps they can shoehorn in.
You sure?
So I'm just going to preface it by saying that I am not the Dunkin' Donuts architect, so I'm speaking on a more general terms. The site plan that I'm seeing has a 25-foot reduction from the property line. What we don't know is whether that's going to be measured from the curb, our property line, a center line of the street, or anything for that matter. Okay? So for all intents and purposes, what we're looking at is, how do I say it nicely? It's just nothing right now. Okay?
It looks like it, the way it's shown, it looks like it's from the property line or the
Right.
right-of-way.
In my opinion, I think that the other, I don't want to speak on behalf of the other
Got
architect, but,
You don't think it's representative of reality?
correct?
Got it.
And I think it was just a guess on 25 feet, and let's take it from the property line.
Yeah.
Okay? If we were to keep our property line, I think everything can work. What does that mean? You want to take 25 feet, take it from the curb up to our property line. Does that make sense? So,
But the
for all
curb,
intents and purposes, this shows 50 feet being taken away from the curb. That's excessive. It's not an expressway. So, what are they trying to accomplish? And I guess that's what we're going to
Find out on
Thursday. Okay.
We're all in
I suspect it
hypotheticals
would
right
be a
now.
bigger
So
turn lane. Yeah.
Thank you.
okay, so I guess we can look at this after we have that meeting tomorrow on Thursday, and then deal with it down the road.
Yes, I mean, staff will be working with them, and yeah, we'll see where it goes. But we just wanted to get them on the agenda tonight as a first look for a potential development. Well,
Okay. Are we good? Any more comments? Any comments from the public?
oh, yes, I have one comment from the public. This is from resident Dale Holmquist. A two-lane Dunkin' Donut drive-through is not a good fit for the intersection. I strongly believe that the administration must conduct a thorough traffic study and accident impact study before voting to proceed with it. Both Wolf Roads and Joliet Roads are important feeders to 294 and 55. The corner is routinely congested without this business. Bottlenecks and backed up traffic caused by cars waiting to pull into the drive-through or accidents waiting to happen. Ingress and egress to the site are problematic. Safety and congestion must be your primary concern in this intersection. This corner plat is too small. As an example, check out any Starbucks location with a drive-through and you'll see the congestion a drive-through creates. More stores with drive-throughs are located within large mall parking lots, allowing for overflow traffic. Safe traffic flow at this busy, critical intersection where traffic feeds onto and off I-55 and 294 must be maintained. This business is not fit for the intersection. It doesn't meet the criteria for family-friendly businesses outlined in the Triangle Development Plan. Any potential widening of Wolf Road makes this proposal even more dangerous. In addition, this proposed business will reduce business for Oak Pantry, an established Indian Head Park business. That's all the public comments.
Okay. Okay, shall we move along?
I guess the one question as well on Thursday, and this might be a question from the village directly to the county, is the status of their traffic study. I mean, they've obviously done traffic studies, and their designs are based on projections of, increases in traffic that are happening regionally that just happen to impact this immediate intersection. So when we request from a property owner who's putting in a proposal to do a traffic study, do they have the benefit of that information when they are looking at, the impact of their?
So what any potential developer would need to do is go to a firm that specializes in it, and those firms are able to get that knowledge and apply it for the study.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Our next order of business is a public hearing for the zoning code modification for shed special use criteria, and we need a motion to open the public hearing.
I move to open the public hearing.
Okay, a second.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries to open the public hearing for the zoning code modification for shed special use criteria. And Andy, you want to give us a little background?
Yeah, so this came about from the discussion that was had at last month's Yeah, thank you. Last month's Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, as well as the Board of Trustees, the commission, it came up, the two homes, particularly in Howard, in which the issue came about that they wanted to put their shed outside of the buildable area, but the current shed ordinance required new sheds to be placed in the buildable area. Now, the commission ended up recommending a variance for it because it was going to block their windows. And that vote was 3-2. And it went to the board, and the board approved granting the special use and the variance to have it be placed outside of the buildable area. But the board also took the recommendation of planning and zoning to reevaluate the shed ordinance criteria, specifically the criteria related to where sheds can be located, buildable area, not buildable area. So they asked village staff to come up with some potential guidelines to govern shed placement, but to have it, but to relook at the rules. So village staff kind of mirrored our recommendations based upon our current rules for pools, actually. Pools, you have to be at least 10 feet from any property line, rear yard or side yard. And so the recommendation of staff is to allow sheds to be placed outside the buildable area as long as it meets all the other existing criteria of the shed ordinance. But to add a requirement that the sheds must be placed at least 10 feet from a property line, and to require that sheds must not be placed in a position that would disturb the effective flow and drainage of stormwater. So those are the recommendations to staff based upon the direction of the village board.
So are we still referring to the criteria of the garage must be 24 by 24 or less?
Yeah, the hardship criteria is still in there.
Okay. And then do we need to say something about would also exclude shed placement from being in the front yard?
That's already in the ordinances too. Yeah, no sheds in a front yard. Yeah.
Yeah, it still has to be screened, and we have our definition of screening. Yeah, that looks like it cleans it up quite a bit. We're not taking a vote on any of this, are we, Andy, or are we?
Oh, yeah.
We are. Okay, this, on the recommendations.
Yeah. I guess my question is, what kind of notice was given to residents of the village about this public hearing? Because we only brought this up as something to possibly consider a month ago.
So
and there's no one here, so.
Yeah, it was published in a newspaper, which is the requirement. So.
Yeah, I remember. You mean the smoke? Sorry.
No, the LaGrange doings. It has to be like the most like a locally available paper, and so we go to the Chicago Tribune, which has umbrella. It's just an umbrella over more local papers, and they give us the closest one, which is LaGrange Doings. That's where we put all of our public hearing notices, as well as like bid notices as well.
I guess I have a little concern about that. Go ahead, Danielle.
I was expecting people to be here because I thought this would be kind of a hot topic in the village, so I am a little surprised that no one's. Did anyone submit any public comments to you, perhaps?
No comments.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also published on the website, though, the agenda?
Yeah, on the website and stuff. Yeah.
But not on the Facebook page?
No.
I was going to say, I don't recall seeing anything there either.
Well, I mean, I was here at the meeting last month, and I agreed that this is an issue that we should revisit. I'm not of a mind to change the ordinance that we have on the books right now, just because I think we gave it a lot of consideration. And as I noted, with the two homeowners last week, we have standards for a hardship, and our job as a commission is to protect the interests of not the homeowner necessarily, but the surrounding property owners. And while I understand that, they didn't want to look at a shed out their window. I think for an individual homeowner, the decision is how important is it for me to have a shed? And if I maybe have to look at it out my window, if it's that necessary that I have that storage space, maybe that's what I need to figure out a way to live with. I think those two situations don't merit throwing out the work that we did over a pretty extended period of time to look at what the implications of this ordinance would be for residents all over the village. We denied a permit for a home on Wolf Road a couple years ago where they wanted to put a shed at the back of their lot, and it was because it was going to be an imposition visually on their neighbors.
And the thing is,
we denied that for that reason. So now I think we're talking about an ordinance that would actually allow them then to put a shed at the back of their lot where their neighbors would have to look at it out of their window.
It would allow it legally, but they would still have to get the special use from this commission. And so, as in that situation, if the adjacent homeowner came and said, no, I don't want this here, it's going to be an eyesore to me, the commission, you will evaluate the facts and make a recommendation. So they still would have to go through the process. It just gives them more space to be able to place it.
Well, and it has to be screened. And I think of the two that we looked at, I think from the neighbor's point of view, it looks better at the end of the lot as opposed to on that buildable area, even from the neighbors, because it just doesn't, if you look out and see that building in an odd place that doesn't belong there. Anyway, I understand your concern, and I do agree completely that our job is to make sure that the community, how it looks from the community, takes priority over the homeowner's convenience.
I guess my only thought / question, maybe more of a thought, is let's say a homeowner complied with all of this, excuse me, and placed a shed in the rear portion of their lot, and their neighbors at the time had no concern with it. And then one of their neighbors sells the property, and the new neighbor comes in and is like, I don't like seeing their shed out of my kitchen window. Like, then what situation does that put us as a village in?
I mean,
the person before they bought the house, right?
I think if they made the decision to buy it, it's like if your neighbor's house is painted an ugly color or something like that, I think.
I do think it's good that we have the requirement that neighbors be approached and asked about this, but I think I also made the point last month that I think it puts the neighbors in a difficult position to be asked, do you mind if I put this here? And have to say, I'd rather you didn't, but I guess I'm okay. If you're pressuring me to say yes, I'll say yes. I think our job as a commission, again, is to sort of be the arbiters of those kind of, not a dispute, but just a decision between adjacent property owners without that property owner having to be put in that position of saying
actually,
no.
That brings up a good point. I think we should all be aware that that's another thing we should always look at, is how is this the sight line for all neighbors, even if nobody objects. That should be part of our job.
But this doesn't change the fact that this will still all come before this committee, right?
If there's anything that looks objectionable to us, we can just say no.
Yeah, the process for the variance requires that they come before us, we make the recommendation, and then the village approves it. So it's not as if
it has to face us.
What we decide here is going to be the be-all, end-all.
Yeah.
Does the placement, of a shed no closer than 10 feet to the property line allow adequate space for any additional screening that might have to happen, so that the screening wouldn't need to be accessed on the neighbor's property?
I don't think so. Because the screening would be basically touching it, like arborvitae or bushes. I don't think they would, because the shed would have to be at least 10 feet, so I don't think you're going to have screening that's going to be 10 feet deep or even if I don't think that would be an issue.
So the motion would be that we recommend to the board the adoption of the modifications of shed special use criteria as described as follows. Remove the requirement that sheds must be placed in the buildable area. Add a requirement that sheds must be placed at least 10 feet from a side or rear lot line. And add a requirement that sheds must not be placed in a position that would disturb the effective flow and drainage of stormwater.
How is that determined? Is that
So the way it would be determined is we would do an inspection, no matter, just like we do the screening inspection. We would make sure that this is not in the pathway of
so
of
the
water.
outside
Yeah.
engineering firm that we engage?
Yeah, either the engineering firm or Public Works, who has the plans too of where water's supposed to be drained. Because we actually have plans for most subdivisions about where water's supposed to be. Like, you might, if water's in your backyard, it might supposed to be there because of the way the subdivision was designed. So we have those plans.
Really?
Yeah, for most of the village, I think.
Do most villages have that?
Yeah, it depends on how far back a subdivision is developed, but I mean, Indian Head Park. I mean, I don't know if we have all of Old Town, but like, it's come up in. We're doing a stormwater study in the 45 acres area, which is like that central area of the Old Town, and because that's where most of the stormwater issues are, and then they go to other areas. And cause problems there because it's higher elevation. And so we have actually plans that our engineers are looking at of the entire subdivision of, okay, waters, you might see water in the street. It's designed to be in the street. I know it looks odd, but so yeah, we do have, we have plans for that. So.
Good to know. Yeah.
Well, there are some homes in that area where like their whole side yard, is sort of a gully, right, to take stormwater. Are those actually easements that the village has control over?
No, most of them, no. There are easements back there that we do, and one problem that we've seen is that, so it was developed in the 70s, I believe, and there's a lot of areas that were meant to hold water, swales and whatnot, that over the years have been filled in by the homeowner, and so that's caused more stormwater issues. The longer time is gone, the more different homeowners fill things in or move things around, and if the village doesn't catch them at that time, we don't know 10 years later if that's supposed to be filled in or not. It just looks like grass. So
is that a violation of any ordinance?
Oh yeah, it's something we've been dealing with recently, and we are going to continue to reiterate. You cannot change the grade. You cannot change the elevation of your backyard, because it can have serious effects on your neighbor's property with the stormwater drainage. So if you're thinking about changing any kind of stormwater direction or flow, please get a permit. You'll save yourself a lot of time.
Good. Does anybody want to further discuss or modify or add language to the recommended motion?
I'm picking up on what Diane said, that accommodating ourselves with this modification, I don't necessarily agree with it. I think because they have to come before us anyway, I think we could make allowances on a special case-by-case basis, but to all of a sudden expand it to something that's in a buildable area, or non-buildable area is just a little too...
I think the discussion was that we can't, that this is allowing us to have that discretion, and without this modification, it's questionable whether we have that. Some people say we do, some people say we don't have the discretion without this language.
Yeah, there's disagreement and debate about whether or not we have the authority. Staff is recommending this just well, for a couple of reasons, but one, to get rid of that confusion.
Yeah, we can always say no. Always say no.
This is viewed as a clarification then?
This is
No.
Is this by recommendation of the board to review this, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
the board's
So the
based
board's
on,
asking
yeah.
us to do
So
this.
at the last meeting, the commission also asked that the board look at this, and then the board said, okay, we'll look at it. Staff come up with some recommendations, give it to Planning Zoning Commission for their recommendations to go
They
back.
would look at it
Yeah.
again, right.
Sorry, could you speak a little bit more to the reference you said about there's question about what our authority is as it's written now versus as it would be amended?
Yes. So right now, to place a shed outside of the buildable area requires a variance, and in order so to get a shed is just a special use. You meet these criteria. You're in the buildable area. You're shielded. You're this and that. You meet that. You've shown hardship. You get the shed. A variance is the next step. A variance is essentially permission to break the rules, to go beyond the rules, and the criteria for a variance is it has to be a unique circumstance. What is unique? It's open to everybody. Is having a window that's going to be blocked. Is that a unique enough circumstance to merit merit going away from the rules? It's open to debate. I know last time the commission said yes, it does, and the board agreed. But also two of the commissioners said, no, I don't think it does meet the uniqueness criteria of a variance.
And we can always say, no, you must put it in the buildable area. I mean, that of course is our discretion. Yeah.
Sorry, I mean, so if we implement this suggested change, doesn't that actually say that you don't have to put it in the buildable area, though?
No, this would be for modification of the special use. It can be in the buildable area, but we always have the option to say, no, we don't think that's acceptable.
And we would still have that option even if we implemented
Because they're
this
in
as
front of
written?
this board, so they have to show us a case for why they should have this special use and variance.
So
Okay, but
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. I'm
So
processing this.
if a homeowner says, okay, we'll take one of the ones from like the last meeting. I don't want my shed in the buildable area because it's going to block my window. I want it further back in my property. This is where I propose putting it. The commission and the board still have the power to say, no, you cannot put it further back in your property. That will be a nuisance to your neighbor because your neighbors, if you have a neighbor whose window is like right here or something like that. So you still have the ability to say no. You still have the ability to say, no, not that spot. How about over here? This just gives more leeway in that instead of being restricted to the buildable area, they have more area to play with, but you still can say, no, that area is going to be a nuisance if you place it there.
I think the board's vote was unanimous except for 2 votes that said we should do this first and that second. Is that correct, your recollection?
I think there was 1 dissenting vote.
And the reason was let's address this issue before we approve that. Yeah. So I think
Sorry, never. So I think, I don't want to speak for him, but I think he agreed that it didn't meet the uniqueness criteria. He wasn't necessarily against the idea of it, but he said, or thought that this doesn't meet the uniqueness criteria, kind of the debate that we're talking about.
So so essentially, that's what we're addressing here, is that if we are to approve those last 2 that we approved, we want to clarify that that's within our code. We want the code to reflect that, yeah, this is reasonable.
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. It's kind of getting rid of, because it would be taking a variance out of the equation and only dealing with the special use. So you're lowering the bar in a way, but again, you're still gonna have the ability to say, no, you can't put it there.
Because even the special use, we could say no.
Absolutely.
If we had any reason to hang our hat on it, any reason, we could say no to anything.
If you think it doesn't meet the criteria,
Right.
which the hardship criteria is open enough that you could
Yeah.
say no. Well,
Yeah, and that's, yeah.
So I guess my only question is, if I'm the homeowner that's coming in asking for a shed, and we've specifically, excuse me, removed a reference to sheds placed in the buildable area, and I presented my case to Planning and Zoning, and Planning and Zoning said, yeah, we understand your need and your request. However, we want you to put it in your buildable area because you've got a whole bunch of buildable area left. I, as the homeowner, would be like, well, that's not written in here anywhere. So I just...
It is, because that's the special use, it's the buildable area. It's another step to get a variance to go outside the buildable area.
The homeowner could say that, but the rebuttal would be by placing it where you would like it to be placed, it's going to cause a nuisance to your neighbor. So that's a criteria that you can't negatively affect your neighbor.
Which is an excuse we cannot say if it's in the buildable area.
You can still deny it as long if you don't think it meets all of the criteria.
Theoretically, the buildable area is the buildable area because it doesn't impose on neighbors. Theoretically.
Yeah, that was the idea of it. Yeah.
Yeah, but so no, nobody can come in and say you have to give us a shed in the back of our yard ever. Yeah.
But this reduces the burden on the homeowner to make a case.
Yes.
It puts the burden on us to try to be consistent somehow in our decision-making with less clarity in the ordinance as I interpret it.
Well, they have to show us that they have a need of this shed. That doesn't change. And then this just makes it easy for them to make a case that I want in the back of the lot. That's how I read that.
All right.
Does anybody want to make a motion or let's make a motion first as stated a minute ago. And if then somebody wants to make an amended motion, we could do that as well. But anybody want to make a motion to vote on? Or would you like it repeated?
I'll make the motion to vote.
Okay, and second?
I'll second.
Okay, and should we do a roll call, Andy?
All right. Commissioner Sveska?
I am going to abstain because I do not feel like I have the full set of information to make this decision.
Commissioner Holm?
Yes.
Commissioner Bruno?
Yes.
Chair Costello?
Yes.
Commissioner Tanzillo?
Yes.
Commissioner Skovich?
No.
Commissioner Barnes?
No.
All right, the motion passes. 4 yes, 2 no, 1 abstain.
Okay, we good with that, or did anybody want to make an alternative motion? Okay. Now we need a motion to exit the public hearing.
I move to exit the public hearing.
And second? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none. Motion passes to close the public hearing. And now I need a motion to open the public hearing for code modification for garden fences.
I move to open the public hearing.
Okay, and second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor signify by aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries to open the public hearing for the zoning code modification for garden fences. This was interesting.
Yes.
Do you want to make comments, Andy?
I will, yeah. So, as is stated in your memos, last year the Illinois legislature passed and the governor signed legislation called the Garden Act, otherwise known as the Right to Garden Act. And the law prohibits municipalities from disallowing homeowners from having gardens on residential properties. One thing that is still kind of a gray area is if you're allowed to disallow garden fences. We probably can. Actually, right now, the village code prohibiting fences in general does apply to garden fences. So if you have a garden and you have chicken wire or a little fencing around it, that's technically illegal.
What's the definition of a garden fence?
A fence.
Certain height or just?
Yeah, so the recommendation of staff is to allow garden fences if they are directly abutting a garden and 3 feet or under in height. Examples of which are on the next page of your memo. So whether it's, because, especially with the prevalence of nature in town, especially in the west side, rabbits, chipmunks, whatnot, it's very conceivable that the gardens could get ruined or eaten or whatnot. So we thought it was a prudent recommendation to just allow people to do it and make it so that if they do try to protect their garden, that it's not a non-compliant structure.
What are the restrictions on are there any restrictions on the placement of a garden? Does it have to be a certain number of feet away from a property line now? Right, irrespective of fencing?
So I don't think the state law goes specifically into it. As far as local ordinance, I don't think we have a specific restriction on where gardens can be placed. I'd have to double check.
You got to follow the sun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, is there a definition of garden in terms of must contain plants growth for intended use by human consumption? Because I'm thinking like I could be kind of a jerk and say, well, my entire front yard is a wildflower garden and fence it in.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I don't have it in front of me, but there is definition of garden in there. But that is a great point. I think, yes, the intention is definitely not to allow somebody to kind of have a loophole. So if it's not clearly defined already, we will clearly define it that it has to be,
And also,
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I agree.
I'm wondering if, since gardens, especially in our region, are seasonal, should the fences also be seasonal? Like, should they be something that is removed when not in season of growing said crops?
I don't really know. I don't know. What are the thoughts of the commission?
Depends,
I don't
right?
think I have an opinion on
Somebody
it personally.
builds one
It looks like
that's
Well,
kind
so
of-
that's kind of my question. Like, how permanent of a structure are these fences intended to be? Because, like, I put up a deer netting on mine every year, and then I take it down.
The examples here are they're not permanent fences in the sense that they have a foundation or posts drilled into the ground. They're basically garden, raised boxes, and they are allowed to have a vertical
My concern
enclosure
was kind
around
of
them.
with that image. That looks like it could actually have footers in it, maybe.
Yeah, that the one to below is more substantial
Yeah.
because it's not just netting on little posts. But
And we'd probably want to say if the garden goes fallow, then it's got to be removed. You can't just
Yeah, that
have
absolutely. You
permanently.
can add that as part of the recommendation that it be for a certain time period,
Yeah.
or as long as the garden
As long as
is
there's an active
functional.
garden.
Yeah.
Rita, did you have a comment?
Yeah, mine follows up with yours. Is there any kind of definition in the state law as the size of the garden? I think we should be cognizant of how big we're going to allow people to have these gardens, because somebody, as you were saying, could take their whole backyard and start growing corn, and is that really within the intent of the state?
There probably is. Honestly, I don't know.
Well, and so my other question, sorry, I have a lot of questions. If someone has raised beds and they choose to put a fence with the 3 feet that's been suggested here, that's no longer 3 feet off the ground. Now we're talking X amount of feet off the ground. So is the 3 feet measured from the base of the garden bed structure, from the top of the garden bed structure?
It can be. My thought would be it would be from the top. The top, like, so if you
So like
have
the
bed.
lip of wherever your garden starts. If it
Yes,
starts-
that's my thought. But if the commission or the board wants to make it 3 feet from the ground, that's fine too.
And my other comment, sorry, got one more. I think
No,
this is
you're
the
good.
last one. The 3 feet height proposal. I got deer that are like 6 feet tall in my yard. So, I mean, it's going to keep rabbits out, absolutely. Anything that climbs or can reach over or wants to graze, it's going to do absolutely no good for.
Yeah.
So, I don't know how useful telling people like, sure, you can put up a 3 feet fence is going to be if someone's complaining about, the wildlife are eating my produce.
You could put a screen atop, couldn't you? There's no prohibition of that.
No.
You could, but most plants that are going to exceed your 36-inch height aren't going to be able to grow. I mean, like my tomatoes, for example, are about 4 to 4.5 feet tall every year in raised beds. So I'm talking, they're taller than me.
So would you say that having a greater height requirement is okay?
Well, I don't know what that would be, right? Because like I think of deer. Deer are incredibly destructive to most of our garden plants. Deer are pretty substantially tall animals, but also I think having a garden in my front yard with a 5-foot fence around it would be visually inappropriate. So I just don't know,
I guess we should discuss that.
Yeah,
because
I think
we're going to make a recommendation here.
Yeah.
So do you think that overrides the value to the gardener, the aesthetics?
I mean, so Andy, I know you mentioned that there had been residents that had complained about, like, what were the specifics of their complaints, just out of curiosity?
So basically, can I put chicken wire around my garden? And I have to say, technically, no. Something like that.
Current.
Yeah. That's the current rule is it counts as a fence.
And how many of these complaints have we received?
So I've dealt only a couple. I mean, it's not like a huge crisis facing the village or anything, but it's still people. So.
Well, and there's probably a lot out there.
And I'm sure that I'm sure there's
enforcing.
I don't want to send a letter. Somebody say, hey, take the chicken wire down.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I walk the village a lot. Like I see a lot of those, and I don't even. I mean, I'm just like, whatever.
Yeah.
But if it needs to be written down somewhere, I think my concern is if we have to write it down somewhere and adhere to it, we have to be very specific about what we write down. Because I do see that if all of a sudden we're like, oh, garden fences are cool, my front yard's going to be a wildflower garden. I mean, not me personally, but I mean, there is going to be that leniency or that potential loophole.
Well, it seems to me we should limit it to food, vegetables, and fruit.
In raised,
But I think the
in
law
raised
that
beds in your
passed
backyard.
has flowers in it.
10 feet away from your property
Oh,
line.
does it? Ooh, that's a good
I think
catch.
it does. Yeah. And we can't prohibit it.
But we can prohibit a fence.
Yes.
I mean, we can require a fence, rather. I mean, we can prohibit a fence.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, I think we can. Okay.
Yes. So we're not violating the law.
I mean, I have a rain garden, but I don't have a fence around it. And deer eat it every year.
I mean, it's the Vegetable Garden Act, right? It says shall allow residential property used for herbs, fruit, flowers, plants, leafy greens.
Yes.
And other edible
Because flowers
plants
are herbs
cultivated.
and such, yeah. Okay.
Did we look at any example ordinances, like, I don't know, Western Springs, LaGrange? I mean, do they establish, like, it can't be more than 50 square feet? Or it can't be more than 100 square feet or something, only that much can be used for cultivation of food.
So I don't, to be honest with you, I would have to look at what they say for like garden sizes, but like Noreen was saying, they're not concerned with the fences, so there's no like garden fence ordinance to model it off of. But yeah, as far as the garden sizes, there may already be something in the code. I looked at this when I wrote the memo, just briefly, but what's not in the code, we can put in the code. So any recommendations that you want to recommend to the board, you can recommend it, and if it's...
So we would be talking about a limit of how much of an area you can fence.
Yeah.
I mean, we couldn't tell people you can't plant some kale outside the fence, but you can only fence a certain
Exactly,
Well,
yeah.
perhaps
amount
it's you
of
could
your
only,
yard
yeah, perhaps it's
for
you could
that
only
purpose.
fence in an area that was growing plants intended for human consumption, because that might exclude, the wildflower beds or something along those lines. Maybe.
Edible vegetables, right, or something.
Yeah.
And then they do the
Dandelions are edible, so then it's a slippery slope, right? I mean,
allow fences
technically,
for
you can make
dandelions.
salad with dandelions, so, oh, geez.
Oh, wow, a lot to think about here. It'd be nice to review that.
Just the size that you normally what's the biggest garden size that typically is, and then have that as a rule of thumb. That's what we have to determine. Is it 20 feet by 20 feet? Is it,
Yeah, like
5
in a
feet by 5 feet?
suburban atmosphere, right? Not like a commercial garden grower.
Or in DeKalb County, right?
Right. I mean, are there any other neighboring villages that have similar fence restrictions like we do that also have something written about
No.
garden structures?
No, I don't know of any village that has fence restrictions like we do.
Even the Burridge, do they have, well, I guess it's in some neighborhoods, it's
No,
probably a
Burridge.
homeowners
Yeah,
association
HOA.
restriction, it's
Burridge
probably
does
not a
So do you
village
know,
code.
Andy, if the Garden Act has any mention of size?
I don't know.
It does not.
It does not.
Just from looking at this.
So does it-
it's not very big. It's a small act.
It is a pretty much, municipalities cannot say no. It's a pretty small, yeah.
So presumably that means any size garden. That doesn't mean we have to say no to the fence.
Yeah, we'd have to consult with the village attorney as to, can we regulate the size of gardens? But,
But we can regulate what a part of the garden is fenced.
yeah, we have power over the fencing.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we just have to determine how big of an area. I guess that's the.
Yeah.
Can we agree that if a garden, well, I don't know. I was going to say keep it in the back, but some people are on corner lots and all they have is front.
Yeah. I have seen several homes with it in the front,
Yeah. Yeah.
presumably because of light or something else, so.
It doesn't bother me aesthetically because I just like the idea of it so much, but I guess.
So, I know, aren't we starting a community garden?
We are.
And what parameters do we have for that?
So right now the plan is to is that we're going to allow the individual community garden plot renters to use chicken wire or use something like that. Technically, I mean, it would be compliant because it's public property. But if we were to do it at your home, it would technically be non-compliant. So that's, I think it'd be best to be
Where
even.
is the community garden going to be?
Yeah, so the community garden is actually going to be right behind the pump house out there.
Okay.
There will be more information coming out in future smoke signals, and we posted online a bit about it. If someone's interested in renting a plot, they are 3x6 plots. It's actually an Eagle Scout project that's teaming up with the village. He is a good kid named Egan. He's gonna build them, and yeah, so we'll have a community garden program.
And is a 3x6 plot intended to be like for a family of 4, or is there any type of designation with that?
Anybody who wants it, you just can't. You
So
can't
a single
sell it.
person or a, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Andy, could we table this so we all can have
Absolutely.
time to think
I
and go
was
home
gonna
and sleep
mention
on
that,
all
yeah.
these things and come back with ideas next month?
I think we should just come up with a plan of how big of a garden we'd want.
Yeah, I'll do some research about.
I mean, with the fence, you could have as big as you want, but
Yeah.
the fence part, right?
No, yeah, I'll do some research about the
typical
size of
size.
gardens. Yeah, what we have, what we can or cannot regulate there. So
I think all we can regulate is the fence side of that. There's no way
I think
around.
so. I think so. Yeah.
Do we have the purview to say someone can't place a garden in an area that would interfere with water flow too? Kind of like we just said for
Yes,
sheds? I mean, I think that would be
yeah.
logical.
Yeah, we do. If it's going to create a nuisance, then we
Yeah.
do. If it's not going to create a nuisance, that's more of a gray area. I'd have to research it more or speak with the village attorney.
But
So-
nobody's coming in front of this board to put to establish a garden or even put up a fence if it complies.
Yeah, nobody's wanted to get a special use for a garden fence. I don't think anybody's even thought about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
All right.
They
So
might
we'll
know.
just, yeah.
I'm just looking online here, and there, it does say that state and local regulation is still permitted.
Well, that's what they're saying, like the fence. We have to have something like can't grow marijuana or something.
Water use, fertilizer use, or control of invasive or unlawful species. So maybe it's best to look at the statute, talk to the
Yeah.
attorney, and get the parameters. I'm just saying, you know, because it's a brand new law, so there's no
Yeah.
interpretations or anything.
So at first blush, it looks like we can regulate, but we can't regulate the size of the garden. Did it say that?
Let me go back.
Either we'll find that answer out.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can continue this till the
Yeah.
next meeting. There's no issue with it. Yeah, they don't have to recommend it right now.
Yeah, I think
Just-
things will
yeah.
be more clear the more we have a little time to digest and process.
Oh yeah, good point. Good points were brought up for sure.
Yeah, like what's the size, what's in the garden, the placement. Yeah, see if we can fine tune some of these thoughts. Okay. Yeah. Okay, I'll need a motion to exit the public hearing for the modification of garden fences.
I motion.
I'll second it.
Or yeah, can we also get a motion to continue?
Oh, yeah. Motion to continue this matter until the next May meeting.
Motion to continue.
And I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries to continue the meeting for, continue the public hearing for zone code modification for garden fences. And now a motion to exit this public hearing.
Motion to close.
And second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries to exit the public hearing for garden fences, and I need a motion to open the public hearing for zone code modification for patio fences, railings in the R3 Acacia subdivision PUD.
Motion to open.
Second.
All in favor? Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries to open the public hearing for patio fences, railings. Okay.
Yeah, so this is kind of another, similar to the garden fences, another byproduct of the fence ordinance in general. So this is an issue that came up within the last few months in the Acacia subdivision, in that homeowners were building fences or railings along their back patio, and the reason why it came up is because Acacia doesn't allow fences. And I guess first a little background. Now this is before I was involved with the commission, but I think most of the members were here some years back. The commission would, whenever Acacia wanted to build a deck or expand a deck, they'd have to come here and get a variance. And just to make things more streamlined, the board passed based on the recommendation of the commission to grant like a general permission and allow the Acacia Association to to sign off on all new decks in the Acacia subdivision. Now, the construction of these railings or fences on the patios came up because, so the village said, the village interpretation is these are fences and that they're not allowed. Acacia hasn't been denying them because Acacia's interpretation is, no, these are railings, because a lot of times these patios are elevated somewhat and they're connected to their actual decks, which are elevated a couple feet. Everyone agrees they're railings. So in order to clear up the confusion and to make it a little easier on the Acacia homeowners, we're recommending that that we do a similar process this time, that we allow, if you want to call it a fence or railings, to be built along the patio of the Acacia townhomes. This would only affect R3 Acacia subdivision. It's actually a PUD itself, a residential PUD, and it would basically allow them to build these railings or fences along their patio as long as it's directly on the, or abutting the cement, not any of their grass, but just their patio that's connected to their deck. And I have a couple examples of, on that back page. So those are examples of, Acacia considers that to be a railing that's connected to the deck. The village interprets that as a non-compliance fence. We want to make these compliant and not have everyone have to go through special
And the
use.
reason for these are for pets or?
It's for that, but also a big thing is they are elevated some, and there's a,
Like this one in particular.
Yeah.
If you're just
and there's
walking backwards.
a concern of falling and amongst elderly residents, whatnot.
Is there no requirement for them to like conform to one another? Because I mean, these are like two very different styles and colors and.
No, it's up to Acacia.
So Acacia could tell them they need to paint them brown.
Yeah, and Acacia does. I'm pretty that fence there. That was one of the ones that came to us because we're like, oh, they put up a fence, so we got them before they did any of the painting and stuff like that. So.
And there's already something that limits the extent of the patios, right? I mean,
Yes.
someone couldn't just overnight lay some brick pavers and then be like,
No.
oh, look, I can make a bigger patio.
And with the Acacia subdivision, I mean, there's 2 layers to sign off. There's us, and then the association has to sign off. So whenever you get a building permit for a deck in Acacia, when you come to the village to submit, one of the things you have to submit is HOA approval. Same thing for like homes in Ashbrook or something like that.
They can't do anything without getting.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I mean they have even more stringent regulations in the village. So
Yeah, Charlie.
There are several, there's at least 5 or 6 different associations that this might apply to, not just Acacia. And that Ashbrook would be one. We've got 2 sections. One is townhomes, and then we also have a single family side of that. You've got Indian Ridge, you've got Indian Woods, you've got 2 sections of Chestnut on the Green. Those are 2 different associations. Is there any reason why we were looking to limit this just to Acacia?
really only because the issue came up only in Acacia of these patio fences or railings. I don't see a problem if the other associations want. I mean, then I think it becomes more of a general policy question of do we want to allow patio fences or allow associations to do them. But really the reason that the Acacia subdivision is singled out here is the issue came up in Acacia, not the others. So.
I'll hold the associations that are impacted tomorrow and see if there's any interest
Well,
to do that. I just wanted to ask a question on it. So it was currently active with Acacia now getting these fences. Okay.
One of the conditions, though, is that there be a change in elevation, right? I mean, that the patio would have to be a safety hazard, and if it is, a railing could be used to enclose the patio. If it's a patio that is,
That what they
you know,
have
is
for the
flush with the ground, you wouldn't need a
association
fence.
here? Do they have that? Is the stipulation?
Yeah,
what Ann said,
so
it needs to be raised.
I mean, I think they approve, even if it's raised a little. I think they approve it because
Like
I spoke with them about
First one, right? The top example doesn't look like it's. It looks
it's
like
barely raised at all. I
Right.
know.
That looks like it's flat.
Yeah. So so they approve it. You probably if it's cemented and it's raised even a little bit, they approve it as a railing.
That's something I think that each of those individual homeowners associations, if they have a unique condition like this, would need to come to us with to make a case for why it's necessary for them to need this as well. I can see when there's a trip hazard that, having seen, with the grade issues in Acacia and, that some of these drop off and then there's a slope going down to public street or something, I mean, someone could fall off.
I think
that
the other
area.
thing, forgive me, were you finished? I think the other thing to consider that residents in Acacia, that I don't have the benefit of appreciating, is that there's a higher concentration of people in much closer proximity. So let's call a spade a spade. This is certainly offering some fall protection, but the reality is it is offering it is serving as a deterrent from somebody coming up to your rear glass siding door, which could very likely happen much easier than certainly my glass sliding door. So, I don't think that limiting it to a fall or yes, it's providing fall hazard, but the reality is it's an extra layer preventing somebody from wandering up to your back window and taking a look in. So if Acacia is going to own it, I'm in full support of letting them own this and monitor it and take that burden out of your hands and our hands.
They're fully supportive. I've spoken with the Acacia president about it, and kind of like we were saying is, Acacia is so different than the west side of town. There is really no park-like atmosphere. Everything's on top of each other. You got Wilshire right next to you, all that. So there is not really the openness of the single-family side of town. It's a totally different animal, I think.
Yeah, aesthetically, I think it's beautiful. Actually, it finishes it off. I think it looks nice.
Well, I think that this fence that's in the picture on the top of the last page is one actually that you walk by if you're going down Acacia Drive. I walked by it this evening on the way here. The one concern I would have is this one was obviously recently constructed, and there is no gate. So there's no exit through this fence without having to jump over it, basically. So I don't know whether that's a police and fire concern, or how we deal with that in other areas of the code. The one at the bottom appears to be taller. I suspect that the picture on the bottom is actually a 4-foot fence. And it clearly has a gate. It can be secured, but if you needed to exit in an emergency or something, there's a gate there. Whereas the one that was just constructed, that's pictured on the top, was constructed without a way of getting out except jumping over it. So I would think maybe a requirement should be that there be an operable gate. I think most of them have gates, and this one may be an exception.
Unless it's outside of the photo.
Yeah, it could.
Walking by it, I didn't see one, and it struck me when I was walking by, like, how do you get off of that patio without having to leap over the fence? Which for the homeowner may not be a concern. I just, for the village, maybe it's more of a concern of just, that typically is a requirement, I think, that there be a way of ingress and egress provided. Even if it's closed 99% of the time, it should be there.
I think that's a fair recommendation. Yeah.
Acacia might have it, right? That same requirement.
I honestly, when I spoke to the president about it, we didn't go too much into it other than they think it's railings, we think it's fences, and why don't we clear this up? And of course, talk about the procedure of it, but
presumably before this would pass the board, they would get input from Acacia.
So I've spoken to Acacia about if they're good with this, and they are good with this.
So how we word it, they would take a look at it and say, no, we don't want gates or whatever.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I've already had that conversation with them. So.
Okay. So I guess we want to make a recommendation to the board to modify the village zoning code to allow patio railings not to exceed 4 feet tall, only on patios directly behind and touching a home, and the railing must have a gate. Is that what we've discussed? Does somebody want to make that motion?
And at this point, this is only applicable to the Acacia PUD.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, Acacia.
I'd like to motion for approval, the zoning modification for patio fences, accepting all of staff recommendations with the addition of consideration towards an operable path of egress through a gate.
Second.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And can we hear a motion to close the public hearing for the modification of patio fences railings in R3, Acacia?
I move to close the public hearing.
And second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries to close the public hearing. Any other?
I just wanted to bring up something about and I'm just curious about what was the process for the vape shop that opened up next to the children's dance studio?
Sure. What? So they meet the criteria of the B3 business, so they just had to fill out their paperwork and they got it.
So that was it. There's no
restrictions about the location.
We were saying like the PUD is supposed to be a family friendly. I mean, and I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying like it's right next to the kids' dance studio.
Sure.
And they have like the nice lights that are on the windows.
Yeah. So the PUD helps for development, but for an existing building or business, we just have to go by what's in the code. Of what's an allowable use, and it's an allowable
So
use.
vape and tobacco and all that
Yeah.
just is what it is.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that was open.
Yeah.
So just out of curiosity, for next month's meeting, do we have any additional?
I was gonna,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, you're good.
I was just going to ask, do we have
Yeah.
more sheds and fences for next month?
So village staff started the process of reaching out to and investigating sheds and fences on the other side of town, the west side of town. And originally we had a list of around 22 properties. We did inspections, and in the time frame from when letters were originally sent out about 2 years ago to now, the number was reduced to around 15. It might even go lower, depending on, because some have already told us, yeah, we'll just take it down. Some of the like old fences and whatnot. So my guess is we're going to have between 10 and 15 sheds and fences. I wanted it to get going next month. We sent out the certified letters to make sure that we got record that they received letter from us that, hey, that you have a non-conforming structure, you need to go through this process or take it down. Well, found out post office issues, not everybody got them. So we're sending out second round of letters. So we're pushing it back. It'll probably be June when we start getting more from the west side instead of the hope for May. We do have one final person on the Bartlett subdivision scheduled for May though. And yeah, that's the update with the west side.
Moving right along.
Yeah, it's frustrating with the post office, but yeah.
It's really nice that we're moving in the right direction as far as getting the village in conformity.
With the Bartlett homes though, like Indian Head Park should have established that when we annexed it, you know what I mean? So it's kind of hard now, but.
Yeah, almost done with that. Okay, motion to close the meeting, to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
And second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, meeting adjourned.